Today, many people take the easy way out without considering the future consequences. They make decisions based on the present, not thinking about the future impact of them or those they care about. So what does the Bible say about this? Is this an attribute that's pleasing to our Father in heaven? In the end, will this be a blessing or a curse? For these answers and much more, stay tuned for Compromise for Short-Term Gain on today's program.
Tradition is one of the most stubborn of barriers when it comes to the truth, and we humans are addicted by habit to tradition.
Everything we do in this life is a consequence, and the consequence is most great with our walk as believers.
Be prepared for some startling discoveries when you open the Scriptures for yourself.
Welcome to another Discover the Truth. It's a blessing to be with you. As a nation, I believe that we're seeing a dangerous trend. As a people, we're no longer making decisions based on our eternal future. Instead, many are making decisions based on the present. Because of this, we're seeing more compromise and less integrity. While making decisions on the present may bring short-term gain, its long-term forecast is anything but certain. The fact is, when we compromise our morals and values, we're jeopardizing our eternal reward. To illustrate this point, time permitting, we're going to review examples from Saul, David, and Solomon. These are some of the most well-known kings in the Old Testament. From each of these men, we find examples of compromise and the impact that it had, not only on them, but in many cases also on the entire nation. Now, for a few minutes, I want to talk about the concept of avoiding shortcuts or compromise for short-term gain. Let me give you some examples. A person lies about another employee to gain a promotion. A man commits adultery and hides it from his spouse and family. A teenager gossips about a friend to gain popularity in the class. Now, when we do things like this, number one, we will more than likely have to deal with it at some point. Number two, it only breeds bad character. And number three, these things seem to compound or only become worse with time. As a person, do you think you understand the meaning of integrity? Here's how one website defines this term, integrity. It says, quote, having integrity means doing the right thing in a reliable way. It's a personality trait that we admire, since it means a person has a moral compass that doesn't waver. It literally means wholeness of character, just as an integer is a whole number with no fraction. Listen, a person of integrity will not compromise for short-term gain. In other words, they are not going to take the easy way out. Instead, they are going to do the right thing, no matter what the consequences. The greatest example of a man of integrity is our Savior, Yahweh the Messiah. We know that the Bible says that he was without sin and guile. Even though we know he suffered from different forms of tribulation, we know that he also never compromised his Father's word. As believers, we're to follow in this example. Now, understand that integrity does not promise a life of ease or without problems. The fact is, doing the right thing is often the hardest thing we can do. But it's equally important to realize that doing the right thing in the end will be a blessing. Let's now consider some examples from Israel's kings. The first one is from Israel's first king, and that is Saul. For those who may not know this story or this man, we know that Saul was not always a bad guy. Even though the Bible conveys that he had the stature of a great man, we know that he began as a humble king. By and large, the Bible shows that this man wanted to do the right thing. His biggest impediment was not listening to his Father in heaven during some very key moments. We find one key moment in 1 Samuel 13, verse 8. Again, this is such an important passage because it conveys the truth and where this man fell short. It reads there, and he tarried 7 days according to the set time that Samuel had appointed. But Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. And Saul said, Bring hither a burnt offering to me and peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering, and it came to pass that as soon as he made an end of offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him, that he might salute him. And Samuel said, What hast thou done? And Saul said, Because I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that thou camest not within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered themselves together at Michmash. Therefore said I, The Philistines will come down now upon me to Gilgal, and I have not made supplication unto Yahweh. He says here, I forced myself, therefore, and offered a burnt offering. And Samuel said to Saul, Thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of Yahweh thy Elohim, which he commanded thee. For now would Yahweh have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. Yahweh hath sought him a man after his own heart, and Yahweh hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which Yahweh commanded thee. Now, prior to this passage, we know that Samuel indicated and instructed Saul to wait 7 days so that he could offer the burnt offering. We see here that 7 days had expired and no Samuel. Because the people were afraid and began to scatter, we see that Saul took it upon himself to offer the burnt offering, even though he was not qualified to do so. As we see here, as soon as he finished the offering, Samuel arrived. Now, what was Samuel's response to Saul? Or because Saul broke Yahweh's commandment by sacrificing the burnt offering, Samuel prophesied here that he would lose his kingdom to another man. What's amazing about this is if Saul would have simply obeyed Yahweh, the Bible says that his kingdom would have remained forever. In essence, he lost everything because of this one moment of weakness. Now, what lessons can we learn from Saul's mistake? Where we see here that Saul lacked patience and courage. Instead of waiting for Samuel, he allowed fear to control him and break Yahweh's commandments. So as believers, we must learn to be patient and not to be afraid. How often do we allow fear to control us? Instead of coming clean with something we've done, how often do we try to hide or conceal it? Instead of waiting for Yahweh to provide the answer, how often do we take the solution upon ourselves, even though we know it's not always the right or the moral thing to do? Whereas believers, we should never allow fear to control our response. We're going to continue talking about King Saul and this mistake, but for the moment, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What does the future hold for you and your loved ones? Bible prophecy has the answers. In the book of Daniel, we see a prophetic vision of a statue symbolizing nations from Daniel's time to the present day. With the volatile Middle East powder keg and the current state of unrest we see on a global scale, Bible prophecy is methodically being fulfilled. These 10 nations are playing a huge role right now, and most are unaware. Who are they? What role will they play with the anti-Messiah? Are they the European Union, as many believe? Are believers completely looking in the wrong place? To understand the identity of these nations is to unlock important end-time events that will usher in the second coming of the Messiah. Request our free booklet, The Prophecy of the Beast and the 10 Toes. No gimmicks, simply a free gift to guide you through the times ahead. Call now, 1-573-896-1000. Can't wait? Then read it online right now, yrm.org.
Did you know that studies have shown that children from broken homes can suffer from behavior disorders and other factors? According to Focus on the Family, children from divorced homes suffer academically. Their grades suffer and they are less likely to graduate from high school. Also, because the custodial parent's income drops substantially after divorce, children in divorced homes are almost 5 times more likely to live in poverty than children with married parents. This has been today's fascinating fact.
Do you desire to better understand your Bible? If so, then you need the Restoration Times magazine. This insightful bi-monthly publication includes in-depth articles on proper living, prophetic trends, and biblical truth. It reveals how to have a real relationship with your Creator, what we must do to be saved, the meaning of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and much more. Only in the RT magazine will you get absolute clarity in Bible understanding, including how popular doctrine developed and why. You can read the Restoration Times magazine online at restorationtimes.org. Also, for those who give a gift of $25 or more, will receive a hard copy of this amazing resource. Don't delay. Open your mind to truth like never before by going online or giving to this important work. You can donate online at donate.yrm.org or by calling 1-573-896-1000 Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 Central.
Welcome back. In addition to fear, Saul was again impatient. Understand that Yahweh's timeline does not always correspond to what we have in mind. Sometimes we want things to happen very quickly, while our Father in heaven may have different plans. Maybe you and your spouse were planning for a child, but for whatever reason it never happened. Again, there are times that we must rely and wait on Yahweh. Again, Saul could have established his throne forever, but chose a shortcut or compromise for the short-term gain. The second example I want to consider is that of King David. While David is known as a righteous king who the Bible confirms will rule as a prince in the coming kingdom, we also know that he was not without fault. His most egregious mistake is found in 2 Samuel 11, verse 2. There in 2 Samuel, it reads this. It says, "And it came to pass in an evening tide that David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself. And the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman. And one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her. And she was purified from her uncleanness. And she returned into her house. And the woman conceived and sent and told David and said, I am with child." Well, as we know, David made a few mistakes throughout his life. This one here, though, impacted him more than any other. He committed adultery with Bathsheba, a woman who was married to another man, and as we'll see later, eventually murdered her husband, Uriah the Hittite. Now, I believe that this would certainly qualify as an example of a compromise for short-term gain. The compromise here was obviously committing adultery with a married woman, and the short-term gain was him fulfilling his carnal lust. What's amazing is this example is not uncommon among married men today. According to statistics, 22% of married men commit adultery at least once in their marriage. This means that almost 1 in 4 men are guilty of committing adultery on their spouse. The fact is, adultery is one of the leading causes for divorce. As many men guilty of this sin can confirm, and as we see through the example of David, one moment of carnal lust can negatively impact a person's life in ways we can't even imagine. So, what was the impact of David's sin with Bathsheba? In 2 Samuel 12, starting with verse 1, we find the consequences for this man's infraction. It reads, "And Yahweh sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him, and said unto him, There were 2 men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing save one little ewe lamb, which he had brought and nourished up, and it grew up together with him and with his children. It did eat of his own meat, and drink of his own cup, and lay in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd, to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him, but took the poor man's lamb, and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, As Yahweh lives, the man that hath done this thing shall surely die. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. And Nathan said to David, Thou art the man. Thus saith Yahweh Elohim of Israel, I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul, and I gave thee thy master's house and thy master's wives into thy bosom, and gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had not been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of Yahweh to do evil in his sight? Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. In this passage, we find Nathan coming to David with a story of a man who selfishly took another man's lamb. Now, what was David's response to this rich man who took this poor man's lamb? We find here that David was enraged and said that this man shall surely die. After he passed judgment, Nathan looked at David and said, You are the man. Can you imagine being David as he stood before Nathan, being self-condemned? What's really bad is that David's sin against Uriah the Hittite was far worse than the scenario given by Nathan. The man in Nathan's story was simply guilty of taking a lamb, while David was guilty of committing adultery and killing a man. Now, what was the penalty for David's sin? Nathan told David here that the sword would never depart from his family. We know that after this, that David's life was never the same. He and his family suffered horribly because of this one sin. For example, we know that the child he had with Bathsheba died shortly after birth. Later on, we know that Absalom, his son, through a coup, ran David out of town and took the throne. Now later on, we know that David regained the throne, but only at the death of his son, Absalom. Again, as Nathan prophesied, David's life was never the same after he took the life of Uriah the Hittite and Bathsheba for wife. David's life should serve as an example for all of us. Even though we can find forgiveness from sin, as David did, this doesn't mean that there's not consequences or that we're free from its consequences of sin. You know, maybe as a teenager you had a child and now you must deal with the fact that you're a single parent raising a child. Or based on statistics, you and that child are much more likely to live in poverty because of this one decision. Well, we're going to take a short break here, but we're going to come back and continue talking about these compromises for short-term gain and the penalties for this sin. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What does the future hold for you and your loved ones? Bible prophecy has the answers. In the book of Daniel, we see a prophetic vision of a statue symbolizing nations from Daniel's time to the present day. With the volatile Middle East powder keg and the current state of unrest we see on a global scale, Bible prophecy is methodically being fulfilled. These 10 nations are playing a huge role right now, and most are unaware. Who are they? What role will they play with the anti-Messiah? Are they the European Union, as many believe? Are believers completely looking in the wrong place? To understand the identity of these nations is to unlock important end-time events that will usher in the second coming of the Messiah. Request our free booklet, The Prophecy of the Beast and the 10 Toes. No gimmicks, simply a free gift to guide you through the times ahead. Call now, 1-573-896-1000. Can't wait? Then read it online right now, yrm.org.
Welcome back. I'd like to now consider the life of Solomon. Before we look at where this man fell short, let's consider some of his more positive attributes. In 1 Kings chapter 3, we find that Yahweh appeared before Solomon in a dream. In this dream, Solomon asks Yahweh for one thing, and that is understanding or wisdom. He confessed there that he was but a child and did not know how to rule as king. Now we know that Yahweh answered Solomon and blessed him with incredible, tremendous wisdom. Because Solomon did not ask for riches or revenge on his enemies, we also know that Yahweh blessed him with unparalleled wealth and peace. Matter of fact, it was under Solomon that Israel experienced its pinnacle or zenith as a nation. During this time, the nation of Israel was blessed with incredible wealth and peace. Now, even though Solomon began humbled, for a time even served Yahweh faithfully, he soon began to compromise. In the book of Deuteronomy, our Father in heaven warned against kings amassing great wealth, many horses, and also many wives. We know that Solomon fell short with each one of these commands. Even though some of this was done for political gain, it was nonetheless a shortcut or compromise. Now, starting in 1 Kings 11, verse 1, we find the results of Solomon's sin. And this is one of the most amazing passages I think we find in the Old Testament. The fact that Solomon was faithful in so many ways, and yet in the end fell so miserably short. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 1, it says, "But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. Of the nations concerning which Yahweh said unto the children of Israel, You shall not go in to them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their mighty ones." It says here that Solomon clave unto these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other mighty ones, and his heart was not perfect with Yahweh his Elohim, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashereth, the Elohim of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites, and Solomon did evil in the sight of Yahweh, and went not fully after Yahweh, as did David his father. Then did Solomon build a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their mighty ones. And Yahweh was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from Yahweh Elohim of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice, and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other mighty ones, but he kept not that which Yahweh commanded. So we find here the sin of Solomon. To begin with, we see that Solomon married many strange or foreign women. Now the word strange refers to women of pagan or heathen nations. Again, in the book of Deuteronomy, Yahweh warned against taking many wives and those of pagan nations. What was the impact here to Solomon? Through his love and attachment to these women, we find here that he compromised worship. We see here that he built high places, places of worship for his many wives. He allowed the worship of Asher, Milcom, Chemosh, Moloch, and many other false deities. The worship of Moloch was especially cruel. According to scholars, worshipers of this god would kill their child and then lay the dead corpse on the arms of this deity, as the child then slid into the valley of Hinnom, the same place where Israel would burn their trash. Matter of fact, the prophet Jeremiah condemned Judah for this abomination. This last May, the team and I had the opportunity to travel to Israel. During our visit, we literally stood in the valley of Hinnom, For those who may not know, this is also where the concept of hell or the lake of fire rose. Today, this large ravine near the old city of Jerusalem serves as a reminder of false worship and foreshadows the final judgment of mankind. Now, in verse 9, we find that Yahweh was angry with Solomon because his heart was not right. Again, he allowed his wives to influence his judgment, and as a result, he broke the very first commandment, that is, you shall have no other mighty ones before me. When you think about what Solomon did, where he started and finished, it really is amazing. Except for the Messiah, the Bible confirms that Solomon was the wisest man that's ever lived. But as we see here, this wisdom wasn't enough to keep him from going astray. He again took it upon himself to pursue these shortcuts for short-term gain, especially as it pertained to his politics, and for this reason, in the end, we know that he fell miserably short. You know, we can learn a lot of lessons here from Solomon. Number one, if we can have a heart of obedience, but in the end, if we don't fully pursue it, we're going to fall short. Number two, we can begin humbled, but if we're not careful, we can lose it all in the end, as Solomon did here. And number three, compromise or shortcuts will come back to bite us in the end. Again, it's not worth a short-term gain. This includes any and all decisions, no matter how big or small we might make. Now, because of Solomon's sin, we know eventually that the nation of Israel was torn from this man and was given to another man named Jeroboam. Jeroboam, we also know, fell miserably short by compromise and forsaking the truth of Almighty Yahweh. Well, I pray that as believers we never do this. I pray that we never compromise the truth. And listen, it begins by understanding His truth. And that's why we're here to discover the truth, to remove the traditions of men and to uncover the truth of our Father in heaven. Well, I pray that this program has been a blessing to you. I pray that you would watch every week, discover the truth, because through this program you will learn truths nowhere else. Again, I pray that it's been a blessing. I pray that you'll join us next time. And until then, may Yahweh bless you. Bye-bye.
For today's free offer, call now. Dial 1-573-896-1000 or write to the address on your screen. Request online, visit whyaround.org. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch all our latest programs, music, and much more. youtube.com/YRM staff. Help us reach many more through your generous donations by calling during office hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 Central, or give online, donate.whyaround.org. For a one-time donation of $25 or more, we will send you a one-year subscription to our bi-monthly Restoration Times magazine as a gift. For a DVD copy of today's program, past programs, and other items, including our one-of-a-kind Restoration Study Bible, visit store.whyaround.org. Join us next week as we take you on a journey of understanding, walking the pathways of the Messiah and His apostles, exploring the Hebraic origins of the faith, and carving away man's tradition as we discover the truth.